Hey guys, this is some of my sticks. This is a video about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm going to be discussing the music and the game in general, waiting for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've got some thoughts about the game since its release. We've all been playing it for 3 years now, so it's had some time to sink in. Rebirth's coming out soon, looking forward to that. Got my pre-order in. I'm going to be there day one, oh yes. But let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I love this game. I loved Final Fantasy VII. The music, particularly, is just amazing. The soundtrack stood the test of time, and Nobuo Uematsu, oh, what he's done with this new game, and the two other composers, what he's done with this game is just superb. I mean, I can't fault a note of it. It's just brilliant. Final Fantasy VII, the original, when it came out, it gripped me straight away. You know, the MIDI sounds coming out of the PlayStation, they played in little 90-second loops through my tube TV with one speaker in the living room, and they just really imprinted the story on my brain. I was like a classically trained piano player, and I was just in awe of this music. It was so atmospheric and futuristic, just so good. Coming out of like that boxy little grey PS1. I purpose bought mine to play Final Fantasy VII because a friend of mine played this game, and yeah, it sold me the front cover art with Cloud, you know, holding the Buster Sword. Like, I was like, I've got to play this game. So just a little setting. Music really does it for me on video games. And I think when the Super NES and the Mega Drive were out, the music on the SNES was just so much better quality, much more hi-fi. For instance, Street Fighter. When you played Street Fighter on the Mega Drive, like Ken and Ryu, when they did their, you know, Dragon Punch, Shoryuken, it just sounded really ropey on the Mega Drive. The SNES, it sounded crystal clear, really, really, really good. And it just wasn't doing it for me unless it was coming out of the SNES. So there's some Sega titles which I really, really loved. Sonic, obviously, Streets of Rage. And they had great soundtracks, but, you know, it wasn't, it just wasn't, it didn't sound as crystal as the Super NES. And that's why I fell in love with a lot of those Super NES games. So PlayStation marked the shift to CDs in games, and they started putting like real audio soundtracks on, and for me, that never always married up with the game, because the game wasn't up to the high res of the audio. So, and I always found that they were a little bit kind of lazy compared to purpose-written soundtracks that have been programmed for a sound engine in, you know, in the Super NES and the Mega Drive, for instance. But Final Fantasy VII, they used the PlayStation's MIDI engine, I think. Nobuo just brought these sounds out that were just incredible. Maka Reactor, the track called Anxiety, I've always loved. Aerith's theme. Tifa's theme, Those Who Fight, of course. Great tune, everyone loved that, and what a great guitar riff, it works brilliantly on guitar. So PlayStation title with a soundtrack, you know, purpose written on Final Fantasy VII. It was just, you know, it sold me on that game, hook, line and sinker. It was just perfect, no perfect the whole way. And you know, you're playing with these blocky little 3D models. I mean, like, Squaresoft were really inexperienced at doing 3D. So it looked weird, but it added to the whole quirkiness and the fantasy element. And then you'd get the little video cutscenes every so often, which just, you know, showed you what the characters really like. But then you were in the battles as well. The battles were where the character models really shone. So, you know, it was great. So I got my PlayStation, scraped together some money. I mean, I washed cars, begged, borrowed, and eventually I managed to get a second-hand PlayStation. I got Final Fantasy VII on 3 CDs. Amazing. I also got a bootlegged copy of Thrill Kill, which was banned, and it was a 3D fighter set in a mental asylum, and that was so much fun, that game. But yeah, you could only play that if you chipped your PlayStation. But most fun banned game ever, Thrill Kill. I don't know if they'll ever re-release that, but you can probably find it somewhere. Worth playing. Good on. So Final Fantasy VII, I loaded up that first disc for the first time. Got that PlayStation logo twinkle. Then you get the intro, FMV, and the soundtrack. Oh, it just left me with my jaw on the floor, and it just chills, you know, up and down my back. You know, that the logo comes in with that fanfare. Oh, it's amazing. And then you swoop down, and the train's coming along, and Cloud on the train. Yeah, oh, just brilliant. So, you know, then you leap off the platform and charge into these 2 Shinra guards, and you get that option to attack. And Cloud just runs forward and just like, whoa, straight through them like butter. That was great to swing that Buster Sword for the first time, and yeah, just cleave the enemy like butter. Oh, loved it. I was hooked from there. I played through the game, followed the ups and downs, discovered the uncomfortable truth about Cloud. I had a lot of identity issues of my own growing up, So Cloud was always a really... Cloud as a character had a really strong resonance with me. I know a lot of people say he's like emo and, you know, just like a dick most of the time, but he's actually a very... For me, he's a really well-written, flawed, but, you know, positive character. I mean, the arc that he goes through is just, you know, great hero story. He stuck with me as a character, as an iconic sort of character, and I guess kind of a role model character when I was really young. So yeah, you know, played through this story, mourned the loss of a loved companion, journeyed far and wide through this beautiful, vibrant world, and eventually built up the strength and resolve to fight the most brilliant villain of any series, as far as I'm concerned. He was just absolutely brilliant. You know, Joe the Black Chocobo Rider. No. I mean, we all know who I mean. Sephiroth, just awesome. It was a really transformative game. It stayed with me. The music stayed with me. Also, when I was like busking in my down and out years, I played the theme from Final Fantasy VIII when you go to Zell's hometown just outside of Balam Garden. I played that on guitar, and some guy recognised it, and he was like, "Oh, dude, Final Fantasy VIII, 50 quid." I was like, "Well, geez, thanks, man." But that shows the quality of Uematsu's music. They hold a real special place in fans' hearts, I think. I really lost touch with Final Fantasy. I mean, I never finished 8. I started 9, but I never finished it. I played 6 like years later, and I loved that. 10, I wanted to like so much, but it was just gash. Like, I don't know why people like it, because it is just the worst game I've ever played. It's so dull. Advent Children came out. I guiltily enjoyed that. I know it's flawed, but yeah, I love it. I never played 11. I never played 12. I tried 13 again, just to devastating disappointment. 13-2, slightly less disappointing, but still very confusing, very odd. I'd kind of lost faith with the franchise, really. I do seem to have that like diluted strain of that disease that Spoony had of having to play everyone even through the torture. So I kind of lost faith in Final Fantasy. I kept hoping they'd reclaim their sort of former glory, but 14 and 15, I didn't have the PS4 to play them, but 13 had really been my Final Fantasy. Oh. Anyway, then like I started watching YouTube, and I was trawling, and I found Clemps' review of Crisis Core, and that was really, really funny. I really recommend that. That was hilarious. Off the bat of that, so I played Crisis Core because I'd missed Crisis Core because I never had a PSP. But I went back and played Crisis Core. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that. Apart from the poetry reading prick every 5 minutes, man. Oh, just I'm not looking forward to him being in Rebirth, but you know, maybe they'll do it better. Did you notice in Crisis Core the intro? Before the train, they do a Crisis Core, and it's the same as Final Fantasy VII, but it falls flat compared to the original, certainly compared to Remake, and that pissed me off because it lacked the effect of the original. These minor musical things piss me off. Anyway, so 2020 comes along, and Final Fantasy VII Remake was released. I was like quite behind the games market at that point. I mean, I was playing PS3 games, God of War 3, kicked ass, Tomb Raider I liked. The Evil Within surprised and intrigued me, not to mention it left me unable to play it in the dark or on my own. At the time, I was too poverty-stricken to upgrade to next gen, so I was really behind. I think even PS5 was out by then, so really behind. And like, you know, if you go into CEX and try and strike up a conversation with the staff about 10-year-old games, it's just embarrassing, man. It's just embarrassing. So I saved up, and I managed to get myself like a really old PS4, downloaded Remake. I played it through, and I loved it. And I played it through again and again. I mean, from the first swing of that Buster Sword to the incredible final duel at the end, I just loved it. And I played it again and again. I platinumed it. Then I played it again. Then I listened to online critique about it. And then I found Machinabridged. Laughed my ass off at that. And then I played it again. There are things wrong with it. I've not lost the ability to be critical when criticism is needed. I can be a real cynical dick if something's worthy of derision. For instance, for me, the Callisto Protocol, what a disaster and a disappointment. I was really looking forward to that, and it's just such a letdown. I played it on Xbox One, and there was like major slowdown and texture issues. But you know, don't release your game on a machine that can't handle it, because that was like lame. From what I hear, though, it wasn't much better in the souped-up version, so it was just like a sallow rip of Dead Space with none of the good elements that made that game. Assassin's Creed 3, you know, the English accents in that were laughably hideous. Though I did love the tombs exploration in that. That was amazing, but yeah. So I've not lost the ability to be critical about things, but Final Fantasy VII Remake is just not deserving of it, and I'm about to tell you for why. So first, I had a good listen of Remake's soundtrack on Spotify. I was driving up to Scotland, which is like 6 hours, so I had the time to just listen to the soundtrack through. You know, I'd loved the music while I'd been playing the game, but to actually focus on it while it's not background, you know, I got a real appreciation of the scale of the undertaking that creating that soundtrack was. I mean, anyone who has an interest in music should invest in listening to the soundtrack alone, just to hear how the original themes are woven through the score. The use of leitmotifs, musical themes for characters, places, things. The exploration versions of the music when you're just walking around, suddenly segueing into combat versions just seamlessly. That's you know, nothing short of genius. Nothing short of genius. Each theme from the OG, it grows like a captured Pokemon into more advanced forms to complement the gameplay changing. It's wonderful. Standout example is the finale of One Winged Angel, and just as you reach the point where Sephiroth's counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to Heartless Angel, and you're really worried then, One Winged Angel weaves in themes from the rest of the game. So you've got the theme from Fight On, the Whispers theme, and it's chills, and then you land that desperate Braver Smash and finish the. Oh, it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So that's apologies, that's a very long and meandering preamble, but let's move to the reason for this video. So my obsession for Final Fantasy VII has been stoked by this beautiful game. I have to gush a little because I'm really grateful to the team that made this. I really love this world, and I'm just so grateful to be able to play through a game of it. You know, I defy anyone to say that at the very least, this game shines from the care and attention and the love that's gone into making it, you know, bar a couple of problems with like 2D slum backgrounds, odd flower texture models, and a dorm room that wouldn't pop. If you grew up playing PS1, you don't worry about things like that too much. I understand it pisses some people off, but if it was all over the place, it would wind me up, but that really didn't bother me. So while I was away from home, I was watching critiques and observations of Final Fantasy VII Remake from a variety of you know, big names on YouTube. And one comment was that Mecha Reactor lacked the atmosphere and grimy moodiness of the original. I do understand that, because Mecha Reactor had a real distinctive, unique, and it really worked for the atmosphere of where you were. It was a great piece of music, and the sounds that came out of the PS1 were really well handled. They just oozed trepidation and sinister sort of menace, the kind of crumbling Mecha Reactor. Yeah, what a great piece of music. And the new version in the remake, I loved it, but I'm versed in orchestral music, so I guess, you know, it isn't jarring for me to go from listening to kind of steampunk futuristic MIDI versions of something to an orchestral score, because the original sounds orchestral to me anyway, in the way that it's arranged. It's very cinematic. It was just done on synths that made it sound unique, made it sound like it was from a fantasy world. It made it sound like it was from Final Fantasy VII's world. But now we've got a high-res version, and the high-res version of those PS1 tunes is an orchestral soundtrack. So, I mean, music is incredibly important for me. I mean, it can either make me feel good, or it can make me want to rip my brain out through my nostrils. Oh. Bad music it just hurts. I don't like it.
Scum-sucking piece of shit-festering asshole!
Anyway, the music of the game is of real importance to me. When I entered the new Mecha Reactor 1, and I heard these grim strings oozing that haunting melody from the OG that I was familiar with, that all fans are familiar with, I was more than happy with the orchestral rework. Then when I took on the little blade fodder mono drives, the whole music ramps up. You get the extra intensity and the wicked beat behind it. I was thinking, combat heaven. I cannot fault a note of this soundtrack. Yes, I love the originals just as much, and they worked with the art style of that time, but I can't stress how flat they would fall in an HD remake. If the music had been anything other than orchestral, it would have been so jarring, in the same way that if you'd have had the orchestral soundtrack coming out of the original game with the low-res visuals, it wouldn't have worked. The icing on the cake is that Nobuo is such a don, Corneo, that he wove in the electronic elements for the combat sections to just awesome effect. Yeah, perhaps with the help of the two other really awesome composers. So when the combat comes in and the intensity comes, then you get more of a flavour from the originals in there. But you know, music's subjective, and I'm going to end up sounding like a total pretentious prick. But having been brought up with orchestral music, there is no other way the music could have been done in this game, superb as it is, and be at once absolutely memorable and also completely unobtrusive into the playing experience. The music only complements and enhances, it never gets in the way. It's just perfect, fact. It's just perfect. Okay, so complaint number 2 was another reviewer said that the game slowed you down too much, specifically forcing you to walk through Sector 7 while Tifa gives you the tour and catches up with you after, 5 years, isn't it? 5 years. You know, this reviewer was really pissed the game slowed you down in several ways, making you listen to dialogue while walking, squeezing through tight gaps. I guess that's hiding loading times, that's an old one. And of course, there's a generous helping of padding in the game, can't be denied. So those were his complaints. I mean, all gamers have foibles. Like, you've got to check every which way before doing the main quest so you don't miss anything, grinding up to max level before facing the main boss, finding everything, beating every side boss or side mission. And there's people who just don't give a shit about the dialogue in a game. They just skip through it. And that totally baffles me, especially when you're playing a Final Fantasy game. But hey, we're all different. But this guy was so angry at the slowing down aspect of this game. I would counter that getting to spend a few more minutes in this beautiful world of Gaia that we all imagined as kids is a blessing, not a curse. But that's me. I had found on subsequent playthroughs there were areas that I wasn't looking forward to, like the sewers. I wasn't looking forward to. You know, I remember them being quite long and dull. Train graveyard, I felt, was a bit of a pace breaker, and the drum in Shinra headquarters was really long-winded, but they were minor niggles really, and whenever I actually got to those stages, just the joy of the combat or the banter with the characters as you're going through, the irritants were just not a problem. But this guy was really angry, and he just thought this was an unforgivable sin, slowing you down a little. You'd think that they'd burned and pillaged his homestead and ravaged his young ones, left him to die in a pool of his own blood. But it intrigued me. A thought struck me that perhaps I was swimming against the current. Perhaps the 150 odd hours that I had played this game were sort of misspent.
Your prize for taking the top spot on the darts leaderboard. You earned it.
So I thought maybe I could play it differently. Maybe a different experience could be gleaned by kind of walking through the game, playing the role in the RPG as realistically as I could. I love single-player, story-driven games. My favourite type of games, I guess, because movies. I mean, I love movies, but most movies can barely compare to the depth that you get in a really good RPG. It was while trawling the videos of remake reviews that I came across this kind of fairly modal opinion that the game slowed you down too much. And there is padding, sure, but these complaints about making Tifa making you walk while she's talking to you, giving you the tour. You've got this glorious 3D rendering, people chatting, little glimpses of individual conversation as you're going along. Now, in the original RPGs, you'd go and talk to everyone in the village to get the lore. Now, they can have it going while you're running along. That's fine. I love that. That's great. That's great world building. That's realism. Like in the original, you could run through an area in 30 seconds. In real time, you've got to take time. So therefore, if you're playing a 3D rendered version, there's going to be a lot of steps that you need to take in order to get somewhere. That's realism. If it wasn't done like that, for instance, you know, the scrap area, it was like 2 screens in the original, and you have a couple of fights. If they'd have done that in this, you'd get complaints that the world was too small, that it wasn't. So, you know, fair's fair. Anyway, so I put my headphones on, to the disdain of my other half, and I played through Remake again, with no subtitles, walking when I wasn't travelling far, and going for the full immersion. And, I mean, fuck, it just opened up a whole new level of immersion in this game. I even noticed the flower withering in the opening cutscene to show like the effect of the reactors, which I totally missed till now. I totally missed the point of the game. I never noticed the lack of greenery, the darkening effect around Midgar in the OG. That was like supposed to show the Maca reactor like sucking up the life from the soil. Dumbass. Never noticed that. But I have a tendency to get lost in thought, so I miss a lot of things that people whose brains work normally or quicker, they get it straight off. Anyway, my goal was to take the game at the pace that it's set, rather than trying to rushing to get to the next story point, because I was hungry to see how they did the story beat or that, this story beat or that. And it just gave me a whole new level of appreciation. Not reading the subs faster than the lines were actually delivered, you know, appreciating the poses and mouse animation for some of the characters, main characters, because some of the NPCs are really, really frightening how their mouths move. But actually, Remake, much better than in 16, the whole animation and stuff. I think they used a lot of stock stuff. Like, if you notice Jill in 16, whenever she says anything, she does this. So they put a lot of effort into this one, and it all lines up for maximum effect. You know, as with any creative work, there's plenty to criticize about Remake. I don't need to go into it because others have done it much more in depth and with much more comedic effects than I have. But I think that misses the point of the story that Remake is telling, which is apart from the OG material. This isn't just an HD remaster, it's a reimagining from the ground up. You know, we all wanted like a movie of Final Fantasy VII. Advent Children doesn't count, though I love it guiltily. But this is as close as you'll get to a movie of Final Fantasy VII that you can actually walk through, and that matches the one that played in your imagination. I mean, it's pixel perfect. You know, complaints of padding would be changed to complaints of unrealism if, you know, characters could cross a space, which took a screen in the OG, but take a whole chapter in Remake. Train Graveyard, case in point. I mean, as I understand it, the game serves as a movie of the Midgar section of the OG that you can play through. And if we want to get sort of deep into it, I guess it works as a kind of microcosm of the whole game, in that you fight Sephiroth at the end, and there are story beats that line up more with the whole story in a condensed form. But this first chapter, Remake, sets the stage for Rebirth, which I guess we know is going to be the real meat of the new trilogy. And this complaint that we see Sephiroth too much, we don't know the story of Remake, Rebirth, Redemption. We don't know the story that it's going to tell, and you know, it was actually really fucking satisfying to fight Sephiroth at the end of Remake. You know, so I didn't have any problem with seeing Sephiroth. I love the voice actor they used for him as well. Did they get the "Shall I give you despair" line in? Oh, I love that. But you know, yeah, the game was real satisfying as long as you learned how to play it. I know that a lot of people rage quit on like Whisper Bahamut. Like, you know, you got to like try SNES games, man, for like frustration and perseverance. Like, Remake is not that hard if you just don't try to use Cloud the whole time, which is, I love that. That makes it a Final Fantasy game, that you use the team, you really use the party. I was swapping around, you know, every ATB gauge almost. You know, once you learn to do that, to swap and to really just pummel the enemies from all sides, and then, you know, unleash the attacks all together. That's you know, it's. I think I took out Whisper Bahamut. Oh, well, I can take him out now in like 2 rounds. I can take him out before he even gets off his Mega Flare, especially if you've got, you know, Aerith's dual cast thing saved up and you get off a, you know, Firaga or something. I mean, she is militant in this game. So anyway, the effort that's gone into constructing Remake's narrative is just staggering, you know, and like, I guess ripping on it for the sake of ripping on it is just. So I assert that forced walk sections in a role-playing game are only annoying if you're not really playing your role correctly. If you're rushing a section, then you're not kind of playing your role. But, you know, 6th playthrough, headphones on, no subs, 100 times the immersion. There was a beautiful piece where like pigeons fly off the ramshackle roof with Aerith when you're walking out of the church. The sound design was just beautiful, and I'm glad they forced a walk for it because you'd miss all of that. You know, incredible sound design work, especially through the headphones. Though I did notice that after you beat Reno, Cloud definitely sneaks a peek up Aerith's skirt on that first ladder. But slowing down, I could feel the love that went into making this game as I wandered through it. Little dust rolls across the street in Sector 5. I think what made the original stand out was the clearly perceptible fact that this was a labour of love made by some very talented people who nonetheless were taking risks to make something as good as they could. And a remake of the game as loved as Final Fantasy VII is going to be a big risk. But I really think they delivered. As with the original, I just think it's impossible to come away from playing it without it leaving some sort of deep impression on you. Unless you're dead inside. No, I'm kidding. But in being given of the game, the audience is then much less forgiving of the fantasy element. It has no basis in truth. It doesn't stand up to realism. Final Fantasy VII's world, it's just ridiculous, you know. But it's not supposed to be. It's an entirely fictional world. Like, you know, these allegations that Barrett is stereotypical. He is a fictional character from a fantasy world. What's it? Sephiroth becoming a trans figure because he drops the watashi in some point. That's a linguistic issue. If gender politics weren't currently trending, it would have been ignored. This all comes down to misreadings due to the characters now being so lifelike. So many audiences are unable to discard allegorical readings synchronous with their time. Truth is, these characters have nothing to do with your identity because they're not real. You know, the game started as quirky little polygonal blocks that everyone forgave because that was the best you could get at the time. But you got invested in the narrative because it was fun and good, not because of the similarity to your real world concerns. You know, fantasy is escapism, not allegory. Lord of the Rings, especially the Rings of Power, is a fine example. Don't take your fantasy too seriously, you'll end up in trouble. I'm not qualified enough to make a coherent review or argument about all this, but I loved this game as a semi-sane and open-minded man. I thought it was great. You know, obviously you can play the game any way you like, but these online critiques, they made me rethink how I approach and play games as a whole. Perhaps this is significant, perhaps I'm a rambling self-important twat, but perhaps it's worth reconsidering how fortunate we are to be experiencing this time of life when we can get pissed off about video games instead of dying of the plague in a ditch. You know, this game needed to be split into parts, therefore there needed to be some extra content in Midgar to make a full-length game that played well. And like, come on, who isn't ravenous for Rebirth? Like, you know, champing at the bit. So I think perhaps can we forgive Jesse's arms comment? Wow, you've really got an arm on you. Or Cloud struggling to push a bookcase up after monkey barring across the ceiling. Oh, and one other thing. Someone said, think big, Square. Where was the clothing line of Midgar residents' clothes? You know, they missed a trick there. Who the fuck wants to buy incidental NPC 174's generic t-shirt and jeans? You know, they're a video games company, not a clothing company. What are you talking about? Anyway, so I had a rethink and a replay of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it had an even more profound effect on me than it did the first time. And I'm looking forward to see the trilogy finished. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.